All right, welcome to Observe This. I am Double G. My guest is a good friend. We used to be on Blue Wire together. He is now working for an audio a podcasting company himself, Vover. Ben Cruz, what's up, man?
Double G, thanks for having me on, man. Fast and the Furious time. I just did Fast and the Furious week on Vover that you were a big part of. So thank
Yes,
you
that
again
was
for
so
that.
much fun. Probably a
Oh,
little bit of an inspiration to this, too.
it was too much fun. I almost wanted to just keep doing a Fast and the Furious based show and just keep asking questions, which may not be out of the realm of possibility. But no, thanks again for having me on. This is gonna be fun.
All right, so before we get into this, explain what you're doing at Vover because you're creating content like a madman.
Yeah, so we have over we're a short form audio platform where we create most of our shows are anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes. So you get in, you get out, but it's still really quality, fun content. Mostly around sports, but we obviously have a lot of pop culture in there as well as we did Fast and the Furious week to celebrate F9 dropping a couple weeks ago. And we also have an app where you can basically it's the Twitter audio or audio for Twitter, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So you can drop your thoughts in there. We have clips of our own shows and you can respond to each other using your voice. So if you've ever want to try out the podcasting thing, but you aren't really sure if you have enough reps, go in there, hop in and, voice your thoughts on whatever. We talk about everything from sports to news to pop culture, everything. So that's what we're doing at Vover. It's the snack size version of what we're probably about to do here.
All right, let's play the theme song here, and then we will get into it.
Observe this, brother!
All right, I've asked this to everyone who has been a guest on this show. We are still only a few episodes in. I don't know, maybe you're number 5. I can't remember. But the title, Observe This, comes from 1995 WCW moment. Do you remember hearing this, or do you remember seeing this this moment played out?
I don't. This was a little bit before I was really into WCW. I admittedly didn't really start until Hall and Nash went over. That was just kind of my age bracket at that time. So, but seeing this once I became a mark and started to understand everything, this was just an incredible drop. It was just for Hogan to be that upset is just out of this world, and it's still funny all these years later.
It is definitely. Okay, so this is mostly for the website, the YouTube folks. I just want to drop this in. The folks who are listening on the podcast are already joined the Patreon, but we are on the Fight Game Media Network, patreon.com/Fight Game Media if you want to hear all of our podcasts. But this podcast specifically is on both. You get the audio version on the network and you get the video version here on YouTube. All right, let's get into this, man. So, like you said, we did a couple episodes of Fast and Furious Week on Vover, and it really fired me up for F9. I watched all the movies except for Hobbs and Shaw with my wife because she'd only seen one of them, and so we just got caught up so that we could see Fast 9 or F9 at the theater, and it was perfect because I was thinking Fast and Furious, and then you wanted me to come on and talk Fast and Furious, so I was just jonesing to talk more about it, and so I took a little bit of your model, and I have 9 questions for you about the newest movie and your thoughts on those. And then after, we will rank. We'll go through your rankings, and I'll give my 2 cents. Your rankings of all of the movies from least favorite to favorite. So that'll be the game plan here.
Okay.
And so I want to read the little blurb for the new movie. Dom Toretto is living the quiet life off the grid with Letty and his son. But they know that danger always lurks just over the peaceful horizon. This time, that threat forces Dom to confront the sins of his past to save those he loves most. His crew soon comes together to stop a world-shattering plot by the most skilled assassin and high-performance driver they've ever encountered, Dom's forsaken brother. Okay, so now, Fast and Furious has a lot of wrestling ties, which is why we can talk about it on what is essentially a wrestling video podcast.
Yeah.
John Cena joins the cast in the 9th movie, the 10th movie of the universe, and he plays Dom's brother, Jakob. I guess my first question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give John Cena for his performance?
Scale from 1 to 10. I thought it was pretty solid. I thought it was a pretty solid way to enter the franchise. I'm going with a 7. Because I don't think they gave him enough room to be more John Cena. I think he played the part that he was given. It was pretty straight man, right?
Yeah.
And he played it kind of down the middle, which is, I think, what you have to do when you're being introduced, at least in this way. I don't know about you, but the whole time I was just thinking he's going to turn face.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I think
100%.
That's just the wrestling fan in me, because I watched it with 2 of my good friends who are not wrestling fans. So, and they know who John Cena is, obviously. Yeah. They understand all the memes and the, like, I didn't even see him on the screen, all that stuff. It's all good. But the whole time I was just waiting for him to turn, and you saw it because obviously he was still very close with their sister. So they planted the seeds. But I thought Cena was really, really solid. I felt like the movie in general was just a 2-hour introduction to allow Cena into the universe.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that. I've been, people are asking me, because I am such a fan. They're like, okay, so how did Cena do? My adjective was respectable. I thought he was a respectable actor in this film.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny though. He's playing a heel, and in his wrestling career, he played a little bit of heel in the beginning, but a lot of the people like you and me were just like, when's this guy going to turn heel? He'll be an awesome heel, and people will finally 100% cheer him because he was getting a lot of boos as a babyface. He was not unlikable enough, but I think that was on purpose because you needed to feel sympathy for him in order for the ending to make sense. So if he was like this despicable human being, like this really, really, really bad person, it probably doesn't work as well. But I just found it ironic that, of course, the guy who could never turn heel is like the most likable heel in the franchise. Okay, so related to this question, in Fast 5, we get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who comes in as Luke Hobbs. When The Rock joined that cast, his character was not in the family yet. His character was on the outside. Right. He was actually trying to capture Dom and family. So that was a little bit of a different way to introduce Rock. But compare the two, like when it comes to bang for your buck, I'm assuming you're going to say Rock's character right out of the gate was more impressive, was more forceful, and I would agree with that. But compared to The Rock joining this franchise, do you think Cena was close, not that close, kind of, how do you rate him against Rock?
So I don't think it's close yet, right? And that's no shots at Cena. I think, again, like you said, his performance was fine, but he also didn't get a lot of screen time, right? Yeah. In comparison to The Rock, like Cena wasn't the only antagonist to Dom and the family. Right. So there was the rich guy who's funding his whole endeavor. And then Cypher is obviously in it as well. So like his role as the bad guy was divided amongst 3 people. So he didn't really have as big of a role. In Fast 5 with The Rock, he's the main guy.
Yeah.
He's trying to catch them. He's trying to blow up what Dom and the family are trying to do. And the guy that Dom and the family are trying to rob is a secondary character, right? They're just trying to get back at him for what he did to them. So, but the Rock comes in guns a-blazing, and again, he just has more to do in there, right? And he also kind of does the face turn as well, right? We're starting to see a pattern here. But
yeah.
So I think you put it best. Cena's performance here was very respectable, and they didn't really want to give him too much to overshadow Dom, I feel like. I don't know. Maybe Vin he's seen how that plays out.
No, well, I think you're onto something, because when my wife was watching with me, she said, "Man, how The Rock they're just trying to get catchphrase after catchphrase. Like she's like, how many times does this guy get paid to say "some bitch" like in the movies? And I was like, yeah, like they really, or I don't know if it was them trying to get his character over or him making sure his character, he's a smart guy, right? He knows that if his character stands out, he's gonna keep coming back. And so I wonder if Cena was a little bit less of that, just because they're like, okay, you can't come in and create chaos here. Like we're all sort of at the same level. Obviously Dom's the Vin Diesel's the biggest star, but everyone else is sort of at the same level. And even in the movie, I'm sure if you looked at like times each person is on character, it's probably all pretty close. So I agree with you on that, and I think there might even be something to that'd be actually interesting to see as we move forward. Okay, so second question for you. In Fast 5, we get The Rock. In 6, now Gina Carano's not a professional wrestler. She was an MMA star.
Mm-hmm.
Ronda Rousey in 7, MMA and pro wrestling star.
Yep.
Hobbs and Shaw has Roman Reigns in that movie. And now Fast 9 has John Cena. So my next question for you is, who's the next pro wrestler to join this cast? Jeez.
Oh, wow. This is a fantastic question. Oh my gosh. So the next one, I feel like, and it probably won't be this because she's just coming back. She just had a kid. I feel like a Becky Lynch would fit in real nice. She's got the little Irish accent. She could be some sort of cousin of the Shaws.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right? She could fit right in. She's a strong woman that could be brought in and maybe have a bigger role. I haven't really seen her acting chops. I've seen her wrestling acting chops, which are, again, two very different things.
Yeah.
But I would be down for some Becky Lynch in the Fast series, because again, I think there's a way you could make it make sense, and where it's not too out of the blue. Like the Cena casting as Dom's brother, I don't know about you, but I believed it, but it took a lot of stretching because they don't really look that similar.
No.
Even when they did the flashbacks and they had the two younger actors,
yeah.
they still don't look like brothers. This was the opportunity where you could have tricked us into it, and you still didn't do it. So
they should have said that they had like different moms or something.
Something, yeah. They just kind of went, that's our dad. Right. So
I really liked the Becky Lynch one. I actually thought you were going to say Charlotte, and when you said Becky Lynch, I was like, nope, that's a better one. So I have a couple now. So the problem is when you're talking about pro wrestlers, they can either fit in or do a cameo, right? Like Roman Reigns fit in. He fit in that cast.
Yeah.
But he wasn't he wasn't someone who's going to take over the film. Ronda Rousey was a cameo. She was in like a short part of the movie. Gina Carano actually got a pretty giant part, and then they
turn. And
then they killed her off. Like I wonder if she was a little frustrated about being killed off. So I think there's a couple of different things you can do. We saw Sasha Banks in The Mandalorian.
Yep.
I think she could play a small role in a Fast 9. She's got that cool, that crazy, sexy, cool appeal to her. I really like. Now I'm staying on the female side, but like a Rhea Ripley who just looks like an impressively put together human being. Like
that's a great call.
She has a great look. Even a Drew McIntyre has a very interesting look as a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I'm even going to throw a little bit at AEW and say, even though I don't know how interested he is, but Mox has a unique look to kind of be a guy in a bar scene who's raising hell. Like that's his look. But I don't know if there's like one like big, who I'd love to see have the opportunity, and maybe this is actually going to be my pick just because I find him so entertaining, is Big E. I would love to see Big E do something outside of wrestling because I just find him to be so dang talented.
And he's super charismatic.
Absolutely.
It's coming across the screen now, right? Even more so than ever during the singles run that he's on. But Wow, that's a great pick. He could be on the side of Dom or not. I would buy him in any role. So,
Yeah.
oh wow, Big E's a really, really good call. I'm in. I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Let's put both Big E and Becky Lynch.
Big
in.
E and Becky. Yeah, Big E and Becky. I'm with it.
Okay, so one of the major things that they give away in the trailer is that everyone's favorite character, Han, makes a return. So
Yep.
the way that Han and the timeline of these movies is treated is very interesting. So Tokyo Drift is the third movie, and at the end of that movie, we are led to believe that Han is burning in a car crash. That is how we are led to believe. But then he shows up in some of the other movies, and the way that they described it is, well, Tokyo Drift actually happens after these movies. Justin Lin directed it, so he tried to mess with the timeline. I think people buy it just because they want to buy it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No,
but
no.
but we're fans and we're gonna buy. Oh, the great explanation. Okay, so but then we are led to believe again that because of the death in Tokyo Drift, that happens after some of the other movies, that he is gone. Like the timeline happens that he's actually gone. And in this film, Fast 9, he comes back, and it is explained that Deckard Shaw was supposed to be the hitman, but then they were in on the plan with Mr. Nobody, and so that's how he's so it's convoluted. It is what it is. Han is clearly a lot older of a human being today than he was in Tokyo Drift. So even me trying to explain that, it was very hard because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm sure you were happy to see Han back in this movie. And how do you think they handled his return?
I mean, I was fine with it overall because I knew that they were going to have some sort of explanation, and already the timeline was messed up. So it was just give it to me. That's the biggest reason I actually wanted to see this movie was how they explain this.
Yeah.
Because you can either look at it two ways, right? One, you can say, well, why did they spoil Han's return? Why didn't they just wait until the movie to spring that on us? Or two, well, now you just want to see it because now you just want to know the answer, which I don't know if that's a great reason to see a movie, but it's a reason. And after the movies we went, I was fine with the explanation, except I'm still a little confused by it, right? So let's just run through the sequence of events.
Yes.
So the car crash happens. Deckard drops the cross onto the car that is engulfed in flames with Han inside. Han takes that as a sign of, oh, you're with Dom and Mr. Nobody. Cool. And then he ends up on the side of the building with Mr. Nobody. So because like when they cut out and back into the car, Han's no longer there. So was it that the Han that was in the car was like a hologram or a fake, or that he escaped through some sort of secret tunnel and then emerged on the building? That's the part where I'm not super clear. I'm fine with him being alive. I just wanted that section to be a little bit more clear so that I could explain it to my friends who hate this movie franchise. They're like, this is so unbelievable. I'm like, well, actually, because I love a good, well, actually explanation. But this one where I had a tough time. So can you provide some clarity on that? Because I would love some.
I assume that it's just Mr. Nobody pulling strings and having his own shenanigans because he's a very powerful guy. So it's I mean, like you said, it's not really, it doesn't make linear sense, but because this movie is all about high spots and super kicks, we can sort of deal with it because we're like, oh yeah, I mean, suspension of disbelief, whatever.
Sure.
And so that I think that's how we're supposed to handle it. But I was happy to see him, but it did make me wonder. Do we see? Did somehow Giselle get saved from getting caught in this this, and flying down, from on the airplane runway and to her death. Like, is she gonna come back?
I mean, at this point, if you don't see the body, they can come back, right? Like Han's come back.
Yeah, because Letty had a funeral. She had a funeral and she still came back.
We never saw the body. Right? So like at some point I think Jesse's gonna come back.
Oh,
right? Like,
that would be the one.
Or Leon. By the way,
everyone would pop for Jesse.
I
so
would.
Big.
I have a big issue with Dom and Jesse, by the way, which at some point I would like to discuss. But Jesse's return would be an incredible pop. It would be fantastic.
Is your beef with it that Dom just kind of forgot about him? Like just
yeah. Absolutely, for someone
because Dom's about family.
Oh my god! So everything is about family with Dom, right? And you and I discussed this on who is the biggest bad guy in the Fast and the Furious franchise, and I picked Johnny Tran,
right?
Because he's the only one in this entire set of movies that's ever gotten to Dom. He's killed one of Dom's family members, legitimately, right? And Dom seems to be fine with it.
He kind of forgot about him. He was just like, that little shit, unfortunately.
The one, and he like doesn't talk about him. Vince dies in Fast 5. But he gets all that money. His family gets all that money.
Right.
What about Jesse's family? Where does and Leon? Can we rescue Leon at least? It's very frustrating, as you can see. I put a lot of thought into this. It's going to be in my think piece in the Atlantic in like 2 years.
Okay, so let's move in a slightly different direction, which is, in like we had this conversation, which is like, what is the most over the top scene in the whole movie?
Yep.
And it was almost like they heard us and they were like, well, we got one for you coming up in the new one.
Yeah.
Because Tej and Roman go into space
in a car.
And they run out of fuel, and basically, which means they were just going to float in space for the rest of their lives. Now, so here's my question. In a movie which is all about one-upping itself when it comes to unbelievability, was Tej and Roman going into space finally too much for you? Or were you just like, that's just what happens?
I think I was somewhere in between, because when they go to that scene kind of toward the beginning with Bow Wow and the guy from Tokyo Drift, I always forget his name, but they're testing.
We will talk about those characters.
They're testing the car in the beginning, right? And they're like, oh, it's going to go to space. You're like, oh, this is how they get to friggin' space. So I wasn't surprised when they said I have to go to space. And then when they were actually doing it, I had a lot of questions running through my mind, right? Like, Tej and Roman were just fine trying to go into space. Like, why is this their responsibility? Shouldn't they call the government and say we should get some astronauts up there to destroy this satellite to save the world?
Lance Bass, Lance Bass is interested in it. At least he's got some knowledge.
Exactly. Like, not Tej and Roman, who one of them doesn't even want to go. You can't, like, if I was like, WG, do you want to go to Buffalo Wild Wings? And you're like, no, that's already a tenuous trip, right? And I force you to come. But they were forcing Roman to go to space. So that already was a little funky for me. But now, so after the movie ends, it's fine. You take it in. And then actually, didn't like Richard Branson just go to space yesterday? So it's actually not that crazy. It's no longer the craziest thing I've seen in the Fast series, and it still remains the car jump in 7, because I haven't seen that in real life yet, but I've now seen a billionaire go to space.
Right.
So who am I to say how space travel, how difficult it really is?
Right. So I think the thing that made it okay for me was I thought Tyrese was hilarious.
He was very good. Yeah.
He was so funny. And so I think they did the right thing by making it all about humor, because then you sort of forget the ridiculousness of what's going on because you're laughing so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a twosome, those guys are very entertaining together, right? A lot of their scenes are also together. They're not they're not often anymore apart from each other, which leads me to my next question, which is which characters would you spin off like they did with Hobbs and Shaw? Because Tej and Roman are very entertaining together. So would it be them, or would you spin off another character? Because if we decide that Giselle is alive, I'm down with a Han and Giselle like Bonnie and Clyde kind of film. Like I'm down with that because I think those two characters together are awesome. Now, she may be a little bit too big. I don't know. She's probably not too big because it would still be a big movie, and I think the fans would love her coming back to the series. But who else? Who's on your mind as far as who you would buy a ticket to go see a spinoff?
So this may just be the wrestling fan in me, and you might already assume where I'm going with this, but I want to see Luke Hobbs and Jakob Toretto. I just want to see that spinoff because it doesn't even matter what the premise of the movie is. I'm in. They can go to space. They can go fight Thanos. They can go to Jurassic Park. I don't care. Those two, and again, like you've cornered the wrestling market. There's no wrestling fan, no matter how jaded you are of a wrestling fan, that's not going to see that movie, no matter how you feel about the Fast and the Furious franchise. And The Rock is the biggest movie star in the world, so people will go see it. Cena, I feel like now is on the precipice, if he's not already, of being an A-lister. So these two together would just makes a whole lot of sense. So that's a spinoff I would want to see. I also want to see the Roman and Tej one. I think that would be phenomenal. But if we're going kind of a new duo, and now that you mentioned though, Giselle and Han, like Gal Gadot can carry a movie from here to forever. So I would love to see that. But I think if I'm thinking fresh, I'm thinking new, a new spinoff, I'm going to Hobbs and Jakob. That's where I'm going. What about you?
That'd be awesome. I think we're sort of on the same page because I'll fast forward a second here because this was going to be one of my questions, which is, does John Cena's character exist in the same movie as Hobbs? And I think you have to do it. Now, I don't imagine there's professional jealousy there anymore like there once was. But I also don't know if John Cena necessarily wants to kind of be in the shadow of The Rock, because that's what he would be, right? He would be the sidekick, Rock is the star, and it would be all about them being able to build up the Jakob Toretto character. And we already know how Vin Diesel feels about The Rock and how Rock feels about Vin Diesel, so there's probably not going to be that crossover there. So I'm with you. I think it'd be a fantastic idea. When I was on Wrestling Observer Radio with Dave Meltzer, we talked about it. I was like, God, it'd be great for them to do a scene together and to kind of do the wink wink thing for the wrestling fans. That would be awesome. But just to go back to the question, I do like the Han and Giselle one. I think that would be so fascinating to watch. I don't know, because, they have a few. Jordana Brewster comes back, and she's in this movie a lot. But I feel like she goes away, and then we miss her a little bit, and then she comes back, and it's like, oh, yeah, she's with us. But I don't need to see her 100% of the time. I always forget the name of the new character, the computer whiz, the hacker girl.
Natalie Emanuel is her actress name.
Right.
I always forget her actual name that they call her in the movie, but she's fantastic. By the way, I'd be down for a spinoff with her. Well,
I think if you do the Tej and the Roman movie, she's got to be in it, right? Because she's the one that they're both always going after and trying to trying to hit on and stuff. So I think she would have to be in it, because she's perfect in that role.
Yes.
And so I really love her in that role. Let's figure out her name. Now I'm really bothered. Ramsey. Gosh.
Ramsey. Yeah.
I couldn't remember that. So yeah, I think those would be the ones. Han, Giselle, the threesome of Roman, Tej, and Ramsey, and then if we could get Rock and Cena, I'm there. I'm there like right at like Friday. I won't go Thursday night at midnight or whatever because that's not my gig anymore. But Friday, I'm taking the day off of work. I'm going to the first showing to see.
I'm
that
telling
movie.
you this: if that happens, I'm going at the 5 p.m. Thursday showing. I'm taking a half day at work, and I'm just, oh man, I'm fired up. So
sort of the opposite of this question is kind of about like the characters that I never needed to see again, and that was Sean and Twinkie. Sean from Tokyo Drift, played by Lucas Black, who is a mannequin when it comes to acting, at least in this series. I thought he was pretty good in Friday Night Lights, but in this series, he's very stiff. And Twinkie, played by Bow Wow. We saw, what is it? Would it have been 17 years? What year did Tokyo Drift come out? 2003?
Yeah, 03.
So we're talking, you know, I think they filmed this before the pandemic. So, you know, whatever, there's 18 or 19. So, you know, we're still talking at least 15 years of these guys or more. Did you need to see Sean and Twinkie as old dudes, like pretty much never growing up and just becoming, you know, old man versions of who they were in Tokyo Drift?
No, I mean, I definitely didn't, but this was just all for the connection with Han, right?
Yes,
just for
yes,
that reunion.
100%.
So from that perspective, I'm fine with it. But again, these guys have only made brief cameos in the previous ones, and it was fine. Like, as long as they don't give them a main storyline to carry,
yeah,
I'm okay with it. But I'm not clamoring for these guys. Like, if they didn't show up in this one, I wouldn't have been upset. I think you could have put a couple of new characters in there trying to launch a rocket car or whatever that they were creating. So to answer your question, no, but I don't think I was. One of my friends who watches this series with me, like the whole Fast and Furious franchise, he hates 3 with a passion that you would not understand. But when he saw both of them on the screen, I heard him in the theater go, "Oh God," and he sunk into his seat. So like, I'm not on that level where I care that much, but I also don't need to see them moving forward.
So the last time we saw both of them was in 7, right? When they kind of showed Dom going back in time, or going to Tokyo.
Yep.
So they were there. Could my guy Bow Wow get in a little bit better shape before? Like, did they not tell him that they were going to do this? Like, he had like 2 weeks to get in shape versus like 3 months. Like, what happened to my guy?
Yeah, and so Bow Wow, I think he's actually a decent actor. Like, he had some decent run in Entourage.
Entourage, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what's up with Bow. He stopped making music. I know he just did a versus like last week actually, or a week or two ago. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's just playing into his character that all he does is tries to create a rocket car. He has no time for anything else. So that's all he does. And now he eats a lot of Twinkies. I don't know. I forgot if that's part of the bit.
All right, so we have 2 more questions here, and then we'll move on to our rankings, or your rankings, and I'll give you my feedback. Okay, so part of this movie, part of the storytelling is going back in time so that they can show Dom's relationship with not only his brother Jakob, but also their relationship with their father around throwing a race. And Dom was not... They did not let Dom in on their plan, probably knowing that he would not have been happy about the plan to throw the race. Jakob was in on it.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened in their trying to throw this race, and the dad, he dies in this car crash, and Dom lives his entire life thinking it's the other racer who bumps his dad's car. That is the reason why the dad dies, and so part of this movie is a realization from Dom that that's not actually what had happened, and that he has to figure out, or he learns this new story. So the way that they do that is they go back in time. They have younger actors playing young Dom and young Jakob, and it is definitely different than what we're used to when it comes to this movie. This is a movie that has flashbacks to previous movies, not to, new storytelling. So What did you think? Did you enjoy these throwback scenes? Did they throw you off? Did it feel a little outside of the normal storytelling? How did you think about this?
I actually enjoyed it a lot because the minute that they go back, right, and they're showing that guy racing, and it's actually, it ends up being his dad, and then they cuts to Dom. Immediately, my first thought was, oh, we're gonna get to see him beat that guy with a tire iron.
Yeah.
Right, like, because that's a scene that from the first one sticks out to me so much, where he explains to Brian why he got locked up, and what he did to that guy.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was, obviously it was not exciting to watch his dad die in the crash, but I was like, oh, he's gonna beat the crap out of this dude, and it's gonna
that's
be
100% fan service, right?
Yeah.
People who are bought in, that is what they are like. Oh, they want to see more of what happened in the past because it connects the stories together.
Yeah, and for them to connect Jakob to that moment was actually pretty cool as well, because it just ties them together even more. Because I think, to just throw his brother in 10 movies in, probably a little tough for some people, but once you realize that the only reason he was in that position to beat the crap out of that guy was because his brother was there first, it just adds another layer to it. So I was actually kind of about it. I enjoyed it. And that moment that they have where you hear the sirens coming, you hear the cops coming for Dom to arrest him, and him and Jakob are just having that moment. Yeah, maybe I'm just getting older, maybe I'm getting a little sappy, but I was like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to understand this connection a little bit more. And again, the connection to the first one, anytime you tip your cap to the original Fast and the Furious, I will always be a fan of that. And this was a great way to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with you. Okay, so I'll sort of lead up to this last question that I have, which is, Brian is still a character in this movie, even though Paul Walker has passed away.
Yep.
There is a scene, and I guess, are we spoiling something if it's like 3 weeks? I don't know. I'll spoil it, but I'll give people a heads up. I'm about to spoil the very end of the movie, which is not 100% important for you to know, but it is a spoiler. So
Sure.
turn it, fast forward for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, click forward. And if you're listening on podcasts, fast forward it. So Brian is this entire time babysitting his namesake, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his own kids. And the end of the movie is, kind of how it always ends, with everyone getting together for a cookout and saying grace, and the family's all back together. And the only person who's not there is Brian. And so he is shown driving essentially a race car, a fast car, and showing up at the home. And my initial thought was, doesn't he have 3 children with him, or 2 children? Because I think one of the kids are, well, I forget how it ends, but he's supposed to be bringing some children with him, and I'm like, oh man, he's got some really good seating in the back there of this really small car. But also at the same time, I almost feel like it leaves me uneasy whenever they talk about him, knowing that Paul Walker has passed away. And so I was actually wondering what you thought about how they handle the Brian character, because he passed away during the filming of 7, and we are now at number 9 and heading into, whether or not, whatever the rumors are, a 2-part number 10. And the character is still sort of talked about in a way that makes you think that in this universe he is alive, even though the actor who played him is not with us anymore.
So I like you, whenever they mention his character, it's sad, right? Because he's not going to show up, and he's such an integral part of this whole franchise. Like, without Brian, there is no Fast and Furious, and there is no Dom, and there is no all through this whole entire universe. But part of me is thinking, with every mention, does this do something for Paul Walker's family?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, does his daughter maybe get some residuals
Sure.
from this movie because he's a part of it, and that's their way of honoring him and making sure she's taken care of. So if that's part of it, I think that's dope. I think that's awesome. From a storytelling perspective, it does get a little confusing because, like, you're right. As a dad now, I can't drive the small car, right? It's just whatever has the most room.
Where was the van?
Right,
we've seen him with a van before. Yeah.
I know he has a van. I know the side of the window's a little smashed now because of the explosion. But
oh yeah, that's right. It's a bad luck van.
Yeah, maybe they traded it in, so they were like, "This is the only way we're gonna avoid this." But I mean, I know his brothers were involved in the end of the filming of Seven, right, to kind of wrap up his scenes. And I think it's fine to keep Jordana Brewster in. Obviously, she's married to Brian, or Paul Walker's character. And at some point, they do have to put a bow on it where I think they can still talk about Brian, but I don't know if they can keep bringing him in, right? Because it's a tough watch because you're like that blue car rolls up, and I'm like, oh, that's Brian's car.
Yeah,
that's Paul Walker's car. You know he's not getting out of it, and that's a huge bummer. Like, I'm all for honoring Paul Walker and honoring Brian and everything that you can do, but I think the teasing of him coming or being in the scenery is tough. Like what's next? I mean, are they going to, in F10 or whatever the next one is called, are they going to have a scene where they're all in the living room and they're like, "Where's Brian? Oh, he's at the pool." Like, no, we can't push it that far. Well, and I think that they're flirting with that.
And I think the reason why it makes me uneasy is because I remember going to see Furious 7 at the theater and seeing the end scenes where you get to see the two characters look at each other again, Dom and Brian, and they're gonna race like one last time, and then you see Brian's face. It was like a unfortunate Photoshop, right? Like I remember seeing it in the big theater, thinking, "Oh, it looks okay," but then when I watch it on my my 4K TV and my HD DVD player, 4K DVDs, it looks bad. Like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how jarring the what they did was." So if they do that, I think they have to do it. Maybe they shoot it in a way where they're like walking away or something, or from the side, so you don't really have to see his face.
Sure,
but you just sort of acknowledge that he's there. I would be thankful if they did that, because if you go back and watch number 7, and there's that scene on the beach, and then there's a scene at the end, and it was really jarring. I was surprised because I didn't remember it being that jarring when I saw it at the theater.
Yeah, and I think you're also in the theater. You're kind of wrapped up in the emotion.
Yeah,
of it.
Very
right?
sad.
You're very, very sad. Someone was chopping onions in my theater. So
Wiz Khalifa was never so never so sentimental.
Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth just ruining our lives with that super sad song. It's a great song, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how much longer that they can do it. And again, if this is some way to ensure that Paul Walker's family is taken care of, like, that's a whole other issue, and that's totally great. I think that's awesome that they're doing that. But I think that they can still do that without necessarily doing all these teases where he's unfortunately not going to be there. And it's just a big bummer and another reminder. Like, we all know, if you're a big fan of this franchise and this movie, you know that he's passed away, and we're already sad enough about it. But to kind of just flirt with it in our face is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about the movies. We'll talk a little bit more about Fast 9 because we are ranking it here. So let's go to your list, and I have it. We will go from the bottom up, and lo and behold, your least favorite movie is none other than Fast 9, which we just talked about.
Yes.
So why is it the least favorite for you? Because there are others in I think that people would say are sort of near the bottom. This one just came out. you've only seen it once, I believe, other than some of the other movies you may have seen multiple times. What is it that makes this movie the worst one for you?
So let me start by saying I'm a massive Fast and the Furious fan, and I feel like all these movies are like my children. So you love all of them in some way, but there are days where you like some of them less. And you made me rank them. So here we go. So look, F9, just from it hits all of the good aspects of a Fast and the Furious movie, in that there's a lot of cars, there's a lot of explosions. You suspend disbelief for the entire time you're in the theater.
Right.
Vin Diesel will say family about 50,000 times. There's going to be a shot of Coronas. I got all of that. But at their core, the rest of the previous movies, still structurally as a movie, were very, very were watchable, and they were fine.
Mm-hmm.
F9, I feel like just, first of all, the pacing of the movie, I felt like it felt like Michael Bay if he just had a lot of sugar, right? And it was just constantly trying to up itself every single second, every single minute. There were no breaths within this movie. So it was constantly like go, go, go. So the biggest breath that we take is in the beginning when they say, oh, we got to go rescue Mr. Nobody. And then from then on, it's just pedal to the metal, and you can't breathe as a consumer and as an audience member. It's just so much. It's over and over again, where it's kind of like the law of diminishing returns, right? By the end of the movie, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess the magnets would do that. But, you're explaining it to yourself, and you're rationalizing it to yourself. So just from a basic storytelling standpoint, it just felt like it was lacking a lot. Right. And again, the biggest issue I'm glad Han is back. I didn't feel like the explanation was great. And ultimately, as I said earlier, this to me just felt like a very transitional film to 10, because I think 10 is going to be massive.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, whether they divide that into two parts or whatever, but it just felt like a 2 hour and 25-minute way of introducing John Cena into the universe. And look, again, I got what I needed out of it, which was just to turn off my brain for 2.5 hours. But man, it was really hard to stomach. It's not a great movie. Like, if you pull it out individually from the rest of the series, it's just the hardest, I think, to watch. And look, am I going to watch it again to make sure that I'm correct? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But, and like, I'll probably watch it multiple times after that, like I've done with the rest of these films. But it lacked a lot of basic storytelling. Notice how I didn't say logic, because that is missing from a lot of these movies. But a lot of basic storytelling aspects were missing from this movie that just really took me out of it. Right. And Tej had his moments, Roman had his moments where he went super meta, right? Where he's like, we're like superheroes.
Yeah.
Right. And I was fine with that like the first time. But to constantly bring it back up to remind us we're watching a movie, come on, man. So that was my biggest issue, was the storytelling, and which incorporates the Han and the meta aspect of it. So that's where I'm at.
Could it be, though, because you did not mention this part at all, could it be because it was the first Fast film since 4 that Rock was not in?
Oh, so this is my other point. I'm glad you called me out on this. Yes, absolutely. So this is just a lesson to everyone in Hollywood. If you're listening, Hollywood, Vin Diesel played with fire, and he said, I don't know if we need The Rock. I don't know if we need Dwayne for F9. Spoiler alert, I think you do.
Yeah.
And I had all these other theories as I was driving home, just talking to my friend, trying to rationalize and figure out this movie. So the timeline of them filming F9 and Hobbs and Shaw, I think, was pretty close, because the release dates were supposed to be close. But obviously with the pandemic, this got pushed back. And I remember there was that whole drama with them asking Rock to push back Hobbs and Shaw, or all that whole kerfluffle. And I think I felt like The Rock was supposed to be in this film. I felt like Hobbs was supposed to be in this movie. And when he wasn't going to be, they had to pivot, and they had to figure out, who can we get in here? And that's when they went with Cena. Right? And that's no shade at Cena, but I think that was them trying to put a bandage on top of it. But that is my long-winded way of saying, yes. This movie, if this movie had Dwayne Johnson, it covers up a lot of those gaps.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, for sure. So this is not my least favorite. It is my second least favorite.
Okay.
I'll tell you when we get to it which my least favorite was, and I'll give you my reasoning. But let's move on to your next one, which is Tokyo Drift.
Yes. Yeah.
So this movie is, if it wasn't in the Fast and the Furious universe, I probably don't even watch it.
Yes.
Now, saying
correct.
that, I did watch it. I was thinking of skipping it because when we did the rewatch, because I was like, it's just so hard to explain. But then you kind of have to watch it because it ties into 7 and then it ties into 9. So I was like, okay, we'll watch it. My wife said it's the worst one. She said it's her least favorite one. She had the least fun watching it. The lead actor was comatose, Lucas Black, the entire movie. But you do get Han. I think also the love interest is sort of like she's just there. Like there's nothing all that enticing to her character. I'm like, okay, Sean is about a 1.5 out of 10 when it comes to the personality scale, and his this love interest is about 1.5 out of 10 on the personality scale. So I guess they fit, but to an audience, I want to see some, just excitement. I want to see some chemistry. I want to see some fireworks. I want to understand why these two characters are into each other. And I was just like, I'm out, like, because they're both so boring. But you do get Han, and so by getting Han, and Bow Wow is fine. He plays
fine, yes.
he plays he kind of plays the Roman role a little bit with the jokes and very likable. But yeah, like this is a little bit of a harder watch if you're a non-hardcore Fast and Furious fan. So explain your reasoning for this one.
So I will say this: I have warmed up to this movie more in the last couple of years because I've watched it again. I've really tried to understand my distaste for it, and it's really just Lucas Black. It's really just the main character. I think outside of that, it's so I'm going to talk about all the good things about it before I dissect it. It does actually a decent job of being the type of movie that it wants to be. Like it's a racing movie, right? And obviously that has a ceiling as to like what, like why are you racing, right? Like I it's the same way I feel about racing video games. At some point, I get it. I'm going from point A to point B. I'm going to need something else here. It's why Mario Kart kind of goes beyond that because you get to attack people. Yeah. But Lucas Black he's a tough watch. And like this is also the first movie where there's no Dom, there's no Brian, there's no Roman. So, or if you're watching it sequentially. So that for me is something that I won't forget because the first time I saw it, I knew that they weren't in the movie. Obviously, Dom comes in at the end to pay homage to Han, but I think it was so jarring where, for me, it was like, this is the guy. This is the next guy that they found where they were like, who's as charismatic and interesting as Vin Diesel? Lucas Black. Like, no, man. So that being said, like, again, as I've watched it now in the past couple of years with I guess a new lens as a massive Fast and the Furious fan, it's actually not that bad. It's still, in comparison to the rest of them, it's just a level below.
There is a community that thinks this is the best one, right?
Oh, 1,000%. And that's what I've come to realize too when we did Fast and the Furious week was that, in doing research on Tokyo Drift, there's people who it's either you love this movie or you hate it. There is no in between. There's no people who are like, it's okay. You're on one side of the spectrum or the other. And I get it. I actually do get it now more than ever. But for me, it still floats on the side of it just kind of loses my interest at times when you're watching it. Like if I come into the middle of Tokyo Drift, I'm not really all that. Like I'll stay for Han because I love Han. I think he's incredible. He's an incredible character. And that's honestly the reason why it's above F9, right? It's because it gave us Han.
Yeah.
F9 gave us back Han, but this one gave us Han.
Okay, so it is my least favorite. So I had to pick, and there's two movies that are kind of right there, and that I had to pick that one as my favorite. So this is your second least favorite. That was my least favorite of the bunch. So let's move to the next one, which is on your list, which is Too Fast, Too Furious. Now, in Tokyo Drift, I think Paul Walker had stated in the past that he should have been in that movie. They kind of wanted to move in a new direction, and that was probably a mistake as well. But Too Fast, Too Furious features Paul Walker and Roman, Tyrese Gibson, and does not feature Dom. Like, there's no Vin Diesel in this movie because Vin Diesel's doing other stuff. So they do this movie without Vin Diesel, and you have it as your third least of the series.
It's really simple for me. There's no Dom. As much as I make fun of Dom, how do you do a series or a movie in this series without him? Right? Even Tokyo Drift gives him the subtle nod at the end where he shows up almost basically in like the post credits, right? And, you know, he's there for Han. But this didn't have him. And I remember watching it during, or I think it was when 7 was coming out. I wanted to get my wife, my then girlfriend, into it. And I was like, oh, let's just watch them in order. Kind of what you did with your wife, right? But we watched in sequential order. And it had been a while since I'd watched Too Fast, Too Furious. And the whole time, I'd kind of forgotten that Dom wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And like halfway through the movie, my wife turns to me and she goes, Where's Vin Diesel? And I go, I think he's coming. And then we get to the end of it and he wasn't there. And it does have one of the more iconic scenes in the whole series with them driving the car off the dock into the boat. Great scene.
Yes.
But other than that, the movie is just kind of forgettable for me. It's not super memorable. And I think a big portion of that is because of Dom, and Vin Diesel just has a presence, right? When he's on screen, no matter what you think of his acting abilities or like what he says, he's got a presence where you remember stuff. So that's the big reason why it's toward the bottom for me.
So I don't have it ranked as low as you do, but I will say the reason is because that piece that I mentioned about the female lead in Tokyo Drift that doesn't work, Eva Mendes has it in loads. Like, she is probably my favorite part of the movie outside of the friendship between Brian and Roman. Like that's really that's the heart of the movie. But Eva Mendes, I'm just like, man. And you know, we got that little tease of her at the end of, was it the end of 7?
Oh, with when The Rock gives her the Letty picture. It's at the end of 5.
And end of 5. So we got that little tease of her, and I was like, man, you know, where is she? Can she's just,
she
I guess
she
just retired, right? She retired from acting or something. So that's why I don't have it that low. Okay, so now we'll go to the next one on your list. So we're going up. Remember, we're going up from Ben's least favorite to favorite. We are at his 4th least favorite of the movies, or 7th place in his favorites, however you want to say it. It is the 4th movie, which does bring back Vin Diesel, and it brings back Paul Walker. So we get the band back together for The Fast and the Furious. There's no mention of the number 4 in this at all. It's just The Fast and the Furious. So that is next on your list. What do you think about this one?
I felt very similar to how I feel about 9, in that I felt this was a transitional movie, right? Where they realized they couldn't just be a straight up racing movie film anymore, like a franchise, if they were going to keep going. So they kind of were floating in between it being a racing movie and an action movie. And obviously the stakes, like I love the scenes where they're just racing through the mine. Like anytime you get a crumbling mine or a crumbling any piece of scenery, I'm in. I'm your guy. I'm all about can they beat it out. Similar to Too Fast, Too Furious, it just felt at the end of it kind of forgettable and not too impactful. Like Letty is gone, right? And that's a big piece of this. But other than that, the rest of the movie is just kind of, for me, from a storyline perspective, was kind of forgettable. Like the action scenes, the racing scenes are enough to keep me engaged. And where if it's on, that's where I'll jump in. But I it's in this middle of the rankings because that's just how I feel when I watch it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm just not that excited, but like I'll watch it if it's on, and that's where it's just a very meh film for me.
So do you think, and the idea with number 4 was to just create this giant franchise? Like, did you think when they put everyone back together that they were like, okay, we're doing 10 films? Because I'm watching that movie. I like it. It's just not giant. It's not what 5 is, which is this giant movie. It looks like you said, it's transitional. But do you think they had the idea back when they did the 4th one that they were going to really go for it, and we're taking this whole thing in a different direction? It's going to be bigger. It's going to be badder. We're going to do some crazy stuff, and we're just going to make a bunch of these.
I would like to think so, because Vin has, at this point in his career, he's already done like XXX and The Pacifier, right? Like those are in his bag. Those are already done. So I think he's starting to realize, again, a racing movie and a racing franchise has a ceiling. And this is where I think they try to bust out of that, where they try to incorporate more what they're doing with the racing into other things. So it's hard to say that they thought it would go to 9, right? Or whatever. It's 10 movies now. I don't think they thought it would get this big, but I think that this was their way of transitioning out of the racing movie entirely. Because once we get to 5, it's gone. Like there's nothing about, there's racing references, but there's no longer any semblance of a racing movie.
Right. And I know box office doesn't mean everything, because there are films that just get overlooked, but I think box office is probably pretty important in this series. So if we kind of look at the domestic gross, which is just in the U.S., and this movie is giant in worldwide, but
Yep.
we'll look at the U.S. When it comes to the 3rd movie, Tokyo Drift, that is far and away the worst performing movie of the franchise. And look, Lucas Black is the lead. Like you're just going off of the Fast and Furious franchise name at that point. The original movie did 144 million in domestic. The second movie, Too Fast, Too Furious, is the second worst performing, and then Fast and Furious, which is the 4th movie, it is the 4th performing movie. So there's quite a jump after Fast and Furious. When you get to Fast 5, it is very clear that the audience takes to what you said is, now it's not a racing movie, it's a superhero movie, or it's a heist movie, or whatever you want to call it. And really, like the worldwide box office almost like doubles from 4 to 5, and then it just keeps going up and up and up from there. So I think it's just interesting because 5, which we'll get to in a bit because it's very high on your list, but 5 seems like it's really where you begin. Like if you want to explain what this franchise has become, you explain at 5, because 1, 2, and 3 are clearly different movies, and 4 is kind of like, we're going to give you a taste of what we can do, but we're going to do even bigger than this.
Right. And again, I always have to say I love all these movies, right? Collectively, but man, individually, there's just some that are, and with these, right, like these are not winning Academy Awards by any stretch, right? They're going to make a crap ton of money, and they're going to entertain you for 2.5 hours. Like all of these do it. It's just to what degree. That's kind of how I'm evaluating them at this point.
All right, the next film on your list is Hobbs and Shaw. So this is number 6 out of 10 on your list here, with The Rock, with Statham,
Idris Elba.
I was trying to remember his name from The Wire, and so we go from there with just a spinoff, which is essentially a spinoff, but you are also taking the biggest movie star in the world, who is he's a main player in the franchise, but like I said, everyone sort of fits in their thing, and no one can Dom's at the top, and Rock is kind of getting there, and so they spin off the movie so that Dwayne and Jason Statham can play together. After being against each other, they're now on the same team. So this kind of interesting way that they wanted to do a spinoff, because again, this is no longer about car racing. This movie has almost nothing to do about car racing. I don't know. The Rock is like driving some giant truck, and there's that in it. But otherwise, it is really just a big movie. Now, the thing about this movie that I find really interesting, the Fast audience, maybe it came out too soon after the Fate of the Furious, because I can't even say that. It was 2 years later, but it's kind of weird that from a box office standpoint, the production budget was giant. The domestic box office was not what you would say is fantastic. It is it'll probably end up being the fourth best performing movie in the franchise in the U.S. I think F9 will probably take it over at some point pretty soon. Mm-hmm. But why do you think this film did not deliver like the numbered Fast and Furious films did?
I feel like a lot of this is straight up just a separate movie from the Fast and the Furious franchise. Like, it's a Fast and the Furious film, but the core of it is not Fast and the Furious based. And I think if you're a Fast and the Furious stan, as much as you love the franchise, you're missing a lot of key components, right? This is where the family thing with this whole crew actually, I think, kicks in, because you're like, okay, Rock is in it, Statham's in it, Idris Elba's a big star as well, but you almost feel bad going to see it without Vin, Tyrese, Ludacris, Michelle Rodriguez. There's a huge portion of it missing, and I mean, you know me, I'm as big of a Rock stan as anyone. Mm-hmm. I think for the Fast and the Furious diehards, this felt too much like Rock trying to hijack this series. Like, you and I discussed this during Fast and Furious week on the first episode. Like, is this the Rock or Vin Diesel series? Yeah. Right. And my call was the Rock. I believe you said it was Vin's, right?
I said it was Vin's.
Yeah. And I think it was, my reasoning for it being the Rock's was just, I think he overtook it. I think it was just his star power, his charisma, everything else just allowed him to overtake the series and take it to where it is now. That being said, I don't think people took all that kindly to him almost literally doing Hobbs and Shaw, especially before the 9th one, right? Which is where a lot of the beef with Tyrese started, a lot of the beef with Vin Diesel started, right? Like they had a lot of back and forths, and which they have since, by the way. I didn't know this until I was researching for the whole Fast and Furious series. They've actually squashed that beef. I don't know, like if it's kayfabe squashing the beef, or if they've actually done it, but that being said, I think that's why this wasn't as massive of a hit as I'm sure Universal was hoping for it to be. There's too much drama surrounding it.
Well, the beef kind of happens during the filming of Fate of the Furious, right? Isn't that where the beef kind of happens?
Yeah, and because they're thinking down the line. I believe like F9 was announced, and then this was also announced. So a lot of this stuff is just starting to come together where Rock gets accused of kind of trying to break up the family, essentially, right? And kind of spin off and do his own thing and hijack the series. So again, sometimes just when there's that stink, I guess, if you will, or a cloud like hovering over films, it just doesn't get the reception that you want it to. And look, this still did massively well, right? At the box office, which is crazy that
worldwide they made it a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's Dwayne, right? That's the appeal.
Okay, so next on your list here is a movie that I actually had second from the bottom on my list. So this is in the middle, right smack dab in the middle for you, which is The Fate of the Furious.
Yeah.
And I will tell you why mine is a little bit, or
Sure,
actually
yeah.
a lot lower first, then you can explain why you have it high. So there are two main reasons why. And I measured 9 and 8 based on the feeling I got up walking out of the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So the great thing about 8 is there's a lot of rock, because he wasn't in 7 that much. He was in the beginning, he was
Yeah.
in the end. He's in
Yeah,
8
yeah.
a whole lot. The Deckard Shaw character is very likable, so there are some fun things about it. The things I didn't like about this movie is I did not like the Dom heel turn. I didn't like feeling like he was a bad guy, and he wasn't really a bad guy. He obviously had to hide this thing from his family, or else the child, his child that he didn't even really know existed would be damaged in some way. So I didn't like the heel turn or the secret version of Dom. It kind of took away everything I like about the Dom character and Vin
Sure.
Diesel as an actor. So the charm wasn't necessarily there. It just felt like you were just kind of like at this, I don't know, this low buzz for the movie, just waiting for him to finally do what he needed to do. And then when he did, you were like, right on. But I just sat in that low hum for too long. And the second thing that I really didn't like about this movie is the killing of Elena. Like, oh my God,
That's brutal.
that was
Yeesh.
rough.
Yeah.
Like, can we, she's with child, like she's got the baby, and I don't know, that one just did not feel right. And we're supposed to believe that they're in an airplane, or a jet the entire time, and all that. So that's my reasoning, but give me your reason on why you do have it in the middle of the pack like you do.
So it's actually the opposite of how you felt about the Dom heel turn. I was interested in it because very similar to when I saw it in the trailer, right? When it was, he's going to turn heel or he's against them all of a sudden. Very similar to how I felt about 9, in that you see Han and you're like, what the hell? How the hell did he get here? So the allure of going to the theater, trying to figure out why Dom had turned, I was already bought in. I was bought into the reasoning of why this movie was happening. Now, the execution, I agree with you, was, again, a lot of holes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why didn't Elena just tell him about the kid like sooner? Right. Like, I think that solves a lot of issues, because Dom's all about family. And if he knows he has a kid, you and this kid will be protected forever. So why? That's just a gripe. That's my gripe with Elena. May she rest in peace. But
speaking of somebody who probably can't come back, would have to be Elena, right?
Yeah, we saw the body.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the flip and the, like, once you learn why he's doing what he's doing and him kind of having to juggle that, I actually found that interesting from his character, because look, as awesome as Dom is, I think the kind of he plays one note,
yes,
if you will, right? And this was a different note, so that's why I enjoyed it probably or more than you. But I see your point, though. I see, like, the allure. If you're going to be Dom, right? If you're going to be kind of like the John Cena of this universe, just fine, just play it straight up, play it, but for whatever reason, I think and this might have been Fast and the Furious fatigue, where I was like, oh, a little refreshing from Dom here. And, give the reins to everybody else, where everyone has to figure it out without him. So I thought that was an interesting aspect of it as well.
So I guess the thing for me, like, I don't watch these movies and go, oh, what a great performance, right?
Yeah.
And so Vin Diesel is a one-note actor, and maybe I just didn't feel like he had the chops to really pull it off convincingly. So that may have been it as well. But let's move on, because your fourth favorite film in the franchise is actually number 2 on my list, which is the original film, the first one.
Yes.
Young Vin Diesel, young Paul Walker, and this is really about Dom and his crew hijacking for DVDs, and Paul Walker loving the racing scene so much that he's willing to give up his job as an officer, and really likes Mia, so I'm sure that helps. But the first film comes in at number 4. I just like it. I just like the contrast in their personalities. Like Paul Walker's portrayal in this film is like hugely aloof. Like he's totally like a meathead kind of guy, but he's playing that in a sense because he's got he has his job as a detective, and he's kind of playing meathead just because he can't let people know that he's a detective. But I just find like their chemistry to be awesome,
Yes,
and it's
really
just
good.
fun also to see them as young people. This film came out, so many years ago, and but yeah, it's my second favorite one. In doing my rewatch, I was like, okay, this is really a really good film.
No, it really is for what it was. I remember watching it. I actually watched it twice in theaters when it first came out, and I think the first time I went, I almost went ironically. I was like, this movie sounds stupid, like Fast and Furious. What is this alliteration? So, but the movie, again, from a storyline perspective, like I bought everything.
Yeah.
Right. Like I bought obviously stealing high priced DVD players now in 2021 is very antiquated thought.
Yeah.
But it was a racing movie, but it had other aspects of it where it introduced us to that whole racing scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I love that aspect of it. I love going to race wars, right? I love the fact that there's different people within the racing scene. Like there are the Doms of the world who are just straight up, they love the scene. And then there are the Johnny Trans who are doing nefarious things behind the scenes. So, and it felt like the most realistic of the whole series, right? It like the realism just kind of, this is where it peaked. I feel like because this one in 3, but again, this is the only time where we see Dom get got, right? Dom and the family have a loss to deal with in Jesse, and that's part of why like I started to feel for these characters and want to be invested in them. So it really set everything off, I think, in a great way. Obviously, I don't think when they made the first one, I don't think they thought they were going to be at 9, right?
Yeah.
Like all these years later, but for what it was, just phenomenal.
All right. So let's go to your number 3 film, which is a very giant, big film with crazy stunts and driving from building to building. Furious 7,
Yep.
which also has the cameo, which I mentioned, of Ronda Rousey. I have this lower. This is more towards the middle for me, just because at some point I just shook my head and was like, you know what? Like, there's too much of some of this stuff, but still very enjoyable, very charming. There's a scene. This is the one where Rock takes that giant fall, breaks his arms in the hospital, and then
Yes,
when he's finally ready to come back, he's got the cast on, and he's just like, and he breaks the cast.
he
like
breaks it by flexing.
That moment is pretty fantastic. So, all right, explain why you have it at 3.
I just have so many moments where this has the most memorable moments for me in the whole series, where I refer to them constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one that you talked about, Rock breaking out of his own cast by flexing. When he hears the helicopter crash in the distance and he just automatically assumes it's Dom. Like the crash happens and he says, Toretto. Like he looks at the window. Like, how do you know, Dwayne? That could be anyone. That could be any crash. But that's an amazing scene. Obviously, any discussion with 7 has to be centered around the car jump, right?
Yes,
it's either
yes.
you hate or you love that. And I watched it a couple of times recently. It's pretty damn incredible.
Yes.
Like it's incredible that no one dies, right? Not even
no one even gets hurt.
not even Dom and Brian though. No one else, no extras catch the back of a tire or the bumper of the car. And Brian saying cars don't fly, incredible. Just the Rock hitting the rock bottom in the beginning of the movie on Deckard Shaw. Just this had a lot of high notes. This was a spot filled movie. right? That's just all it was. It was high spot after high spot, but they also sprinkled in, a little story, and they didn't overdo it with The Rock, his involvement. So I thought it was a very tame usage of him in terms of his usage rate. And it still had, this is the movie where I really, really, really started to embrace the absurdity of the Fast and the Furious franchise. And this is what flipped watching any film before it, like with a different lens, where I was like, I've kind of been watching this wrong in that I've been trying to pick apart like what's believable about it and what's not. And 7 is the moment where the light bulb went off with, oh, I'm supposed to turn this off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's that's where I'm at. That's why I love it so much.
Okay, so your next one is actually my favorite on this list. It is Fast 6. And so I have the picture here of Gina Carano and Dwayne Johnson. What Gina Carano turned into could kind of maybe turn me against this film ever so slightly, but the fact that she eats it in the end and is a goner, I'm okay with. So this is my favorite, and you have 5, which we'll get to as your. I think people have sort of figured that as we're getting to the end here. I have that at number 3, and I'll tell you why I like this movie more. Now, The Rock is a baby face in this movie, in the universe, right? He wasn't a bad person in 5. He was just hunting down our favorites, right? So now they're on the same team. So I like that part. We're on the same team. We're good. We're going to do this thing together. Rock is a big part of this. I was very happy with that. The second reason why I have this higher on my list than 5 is because in 4, we mentioned Letty dies.
Yep.
So you take Letty out of the franchise and you put Elena into the franchise in 5. I am not saying that Elena wasn't a good character, but in no way could she hold, Letty's purse or whatever the way you want to.
Correct.
Letty's too badass for a purse. Yes. She couldn't hold Letty's whatever. So I think with Letty out of 5 until the end, like you mentioned, where we see that she's still alive, I feel like that character being missing and then being put back into 6 and the whole amnesia, we're trying to get her back. Dom's entire his whole story is just the unconditional love he has for this woman, no matter what. Like that is a great part of this movie, and I think just Michelle Rodriguez being in it puts it over 5 for me. But I'll let you explain in a second. But do we know why why was she did she need to do something? Like why would you kill her off? Was it just to bring her back but then she loses out on being in 5, which is a giant movie. I'm not confused about that.
I don't know if they planned that far ahead with everything, where it might have been the same situation with Han, where they killed her off and they realized, oh shit, she's really important to the
I literally
franchise.
can't find anything on the internet about it.
I don't think they thought that one through, but no, I'm with you. I really, really love this film from the Letty perspective, right? It's just that battle between, she clearly sees that she knows these people or that they know her, and she can't figure out why she doesn't know them. That internal battle and Dom trying to reel her back in or just help her remember is a fantastic just draw for this movie. And it was something that we hadn't gotten up until this point, right? Like they've always had that romantic connection, but Dom has always kind of had everything handed to him, or he's gotten everything, or he's gotten what he's needed to. This was something that he couldn't quite get, and he obviously does get it. But even when he does get it, he doesn't get the full Letty back, right? She tells him, I think it's at the end of this one or the beginning of 7, where she says, the person that you're looking for is no longer here, right? And that's as stupid as it sounds, it's kind of a powerful moment, right? Where you're just like, oh, well, she clearly still has love for him and still loves him, but not as the same Letty that he remembers, which is crazy.
Right. All right. So let's get to your ace, your number 1.
Yes.
This is the turning point of the franchise. It is number 5, Everybody is in this movie. I don't know how they can put so many people in one film, and every character has a role, and you dig and you cheer for them. But we have Fast Five as your number one.
Like you said, this was a turning point for the franchise where it graduates, right? It becomes more than just a racing movie. It goes into full-fledged action, and it sprinkles in still the aspects of the racing culture that we love about the first one and the first couple. Obviously they have that racing scene where he lures in Hobbs and his crew to try to arrest him, but they're not going to. So there's that. But it's a bit of a racing movie, not so much anymore. An action film. It's a heist movie. It incorporates all of these aspects in such a way where there's magic involved. Like, how the hell did they do that with the safe? Obviously, they showed you at the end. It's
Yes.
still incredible to me.
It's a great scene.
It's where, again, the franchise really just starts to take off and separates itself from the rest. This is where, again, this franchise is the 7th highest grossing movie franchise of all time.
Yeah.
This is where it starts to graduate to that, because up until that point, you're like, oh, they might make, a couple more of these and it might flame out. But this is where you realize, oh, they're going to keep making these for as long as we're alive, or as long as the world exists. They're going to keep making Fast and the Furious films, and it's entertaining from the jump. Obviously, The Rock's involvement is huge, but anytime I see this on TV, or like I catch it at any moment, I'm finishing it. That's it's just as simple as that. It's so good.
And the where they shot it was amazing. It is very you can watch for a few minutes and know exactly that it's 5. A lot of these movies can kind of run into each other, but just the way that this film looks, like you're like, oh, that's this is 5. So no, great. So I'm gonna read your list and I'll read my list from top to bottom. So your number 1. So 1 through 10 here for Ben Cruz. Fast 5, Fast 6, Furious 7, the original film, the first one. Fate of the Furious, I guess is what it's called, number 8, and then Hobbs and Shaw. Then the 4th film, which they called The Fast and The Furious. Then Too Fast, Too Furious, Tokyo Drift, which is the 3rd film, and F9, the most recent one, is your least favorite.
Yep.
From me, top to bottom, I like Fast 6. And then the first film, and then Fast 5, The Fast and the Furious, which is the 4th film, Furious 7, Too Fast, Too Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, F9, F8, and Tokyo Drift. So there you go. I feel like this podcast, this video podcast, will withstand the test of time. But the second Hobbs and Shaw Part 2 or Fast 10, whichever comes first, it would be great if they did Fast 10 Part 1, and then they did Hobbs and Shaw 2, and maybe Rock and Statham are not in Part 1, but then in Hobbs and Shaw 2, there's a little bit of a connection, between the 3 films, and then you come back with the second part of Fast 10, and then Rock and Statham are in there. I like it when they connect the stories like that, so that would be fun. But at the very least, we have 3 movies coming, and then I can't imagine they stop at 10. Maybe it just becomes spinoff after spinoff after spinoff, but hopefully, I think we at least have 3 films left. So once the next one comes out, this podcast becomes obsolete, but it just means that we got to come back and do something else on it.
We'll do it again. We'll do it all over again.
All right. So thanks to Ben. I am a double G. Check out the, let's see, where's my camera here? There we go. The Patreon at patreon.com/Fight Game Media. For those of you who are watching on video, those of you on the podcast, you already know where to go. And so we will see you when we see you. Peace.
Peace
out.